You should remember what we've already talked about in terms of acetylcholine and glutamate, as well as GABA, which acts as a neurotransmitter that binds to a different kind of ion channel receptor, one that lets chloride through. Chloride flows in and hyperpolarizes the cell. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that we're going to spend the most time talking about in this unit. Dopamine has two different kinds of receptors. Neither one is an ion channel. Both of them are metabotropic receptors, and metabotropic receptors have indirect activation of their targets. So, for example, the D1 receptor will activate something called a G-stimulatory protein inside the cell, and then that will indirectly open a sodium channel, as well as doing a few other things. The D2 receptor activates a different G protein inside the cell called a GI or G inhibitory protein, and this eventually opens a potassium channel that hyperpolarizes the cell. The same terms that are used for ion channel receptors also can be used for metabotropic receptors. So you can have agonist and antagonist drugs for metabotropic receptors. The next thing that we talked about is the transporters that remove neurotransmitter from the synapses. Remember that for all neurotransmitters, they need to be degraded or destroyed or removed. Acetylcholine is degraded by acetylcholine esterase. Glutamate gets removed by astrocytes. And for dopamine, it gets sucked back up through a dopamine transporter in the presynaptic cell itself. Cocaine blocks the dopamine transporter. Amphetamines and methamphetamines not only stop the transporter from removing dopamine, but actually start to reverse it so that it squirts more dopamine out into the synaptic cleft. Interestingly, Ritalin is actually less addictive and gives less of a high than cocaine because unlike cocaine, it is not quite as selective for the dopamine transporter, but instead also slows down, binds to, and blocks the serotonin and norepinephrine transporters. These drugs would be considered antagonists to the transporter, but functionally they're more like an agonist for the receptor because we're keeping the natural neurotransmitter around longer, which means that the synapse is more active.